The galactic conclave chamber was a symphony of whispered mathematics. Representatives from 100 species consulted crystalline data slates, the gentle hum of translation implants filling the air. Today was the final compliance hearing for humanity. The verdict was a foregone conclusion. The species was clever, undeniably, but unstable. Their history was a discordant blast of conflict and poetry, impossible to harmonize with the serene, logical chorus of the galactic community. The head adjudicator, a being of graceful silver filaments, pulsed with soft light. We acknowledge human ingenuity. Your faster-than-light solution, while inelegant, is functional. Yet our core assessment remains. Your cultural output lacks coherence. Your arts are chaotic. Your narratives lack convergent themes. You are a cacophony. Integration requires a shared, simple harmony. Can you provide a final statement? The human diplomat, a man with tired eyes, stood. We submit one final cultural artifact for review. A performance. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Previous. Submissions a selection of great visual arts. A compilation of major philosophical texts had been dismissed as emotionally overwrought and logically inconsistent. What could a performance achieve? By whom? The adjudicator asked. By our premier composer, the diplomat said. He gestured to the side portal. She will use the instrument we have brought. The doors opened. A human female entered, dressed in simple dark clothing. She was neither young nor old, her face a map of quiet concentration. She did not look at the assembled galaxy. She walked to the center of the platform, where a large, rectangular object sat under a black cloth. With a calm motion, she removed the cloth. The assembly saw a complex construction of polished wood and wire, a peculiar structure of levers and pedals. It was a piano. The aliens observed it with analytical detachment. A percussive string resonator, a technologically primitive noisemaker. The performer sat on the bench. She placed her hands in her lap, closed her eyes, and took a single deep breath. The conclave waited for the simple, declarative tune they expected. A proof of basic harmonic understanding. A child's melody. She began to play. The first notes were not notes at all, but a whisper, a faint stirring of the lower strings, a deep sea that resonated in the chests of those present. It was the sound of void, of formless potential. Then, with the left hand, a pattern emerged, a slow, inevitable march of single notes, a gravitational pull. It was simple, predictable. The adjudicator's filaments relaxed. This was acceptable. A basic harmonic progression. Then the right hand entered. It was not a tune. It was a cascade. A torrent of high, clear notes tumbled over the deep march, like stars being born from a dark nebula. They were swift, intricate, breathtakingly complex. Yet every one landed with perfect intention, weaving into the left hand's foundation not with submission, but with brilliant, defiant conversation. The assembly froze. Data slates were forgotten. The performer's body remained still, a calm center from which a storm of sound emanated. Her fingers were not merely striking keys. They were dancing, leaping, at times caressing, at times hammering with a force that made the great wooden frame shudder. The piece built. It was not a linear story, but an emotional landscape. There were moments of profound, aching beauty, melodies so tender they seemed to physically ache in the air. These would fracture into passages of frantic, racing urgency, a skittering chase of notes up and down the scales. Then came sequences of thunderous, clustered chords, each one a tectonic shift, a declaration of power that shook the very floor plates. An ambassador from the silicon-based Kel, who communicated via resonant frequencies, began to vibrate in subtle, uncontrolled sympathy. Its aides stared, their own crystalline forms flickering with unease. The Kel had never experienced an external frequency that bypassed their logic centers so completely. the piece moved into a section of profound sorrow. The melody, carried now in the mid-register, became a lament. It spoke of loss, of empty spaces and long nights. It was not a sterile report of sadness. It was the feeling itself, given sound. A gaseous lyrid delegate, usually a shimmering cloud of calm color, condensed into a dense, dark blue sphere, mist precipitating within its containment field. Just as the sorrow seemed unbearable, the music shifted again. The performer introduced a single repeating high note, like a persistent beacon. The left hand began a slow, heroic climb out of the depths. The right hand answered, not with chaos, but with a soaring, intricate variation of the original lament, transforming it from a cry of grief into an anthem of remembrance. It was resilience. It was the act of carrying a weight and walking forward. The final minutes were a crescendo of terrifying, glorious complexity. Both hands flew across the entire range of the instrument. The deep bass roared like engine cores. The treble sang like solar winds. Every theme returned, not merely repeated, but argued with, celebrated, and ultimately forged together in a final, breathtaking chord that hung in the air, vibrating for a full 10 seconds after her hands had lifted and returned to her lap. Silence. It was a different silence than before. It was thick, heavy, charged. The air itself seemed ionized by the sound that had just passed through it. The human performer opened her eyes. She looked at her hands, then stood. She gave a small, respectful nod to the assembly and walked out the way she came, leaving the piano and the stunned galaxy behind. For a long time, no one moved. No one consulted a slate. The head adjudicator's silver filaments were motionless. Finally, it pulsed, its voice quieter than before. What was that? The human diplomat, who had watched with tears cutting clean tracks down his face, cleared his throat. It is a piece by a human composer named Sergei Rachmaninoff. His Piano Concerto No. 3. What you heard was the final movement. She played only a portion. The full work requires an entire orchestra. An orchestra? Whispered an avian delegate, its feathers still partially fluffed. Many instruments in harmony and in conflict, like humanity. The adjudicator gathered its thoughts. The technical proficiency, it surpasses our most precise harmonic engines. But it was not the technique. It was the content. You contained contradictions within a single frame. Despair and hope, chaos and order, fury and tenderness. You did not resolve them into one simple thing. You held them all in tension. That is what we could not comprehend. It turned to the assembly. We judged their history as a series of failures. A failure to maintain peace, a failure to conform. We heard only noise. We asked for a simple tune to prove they could be harmonious. The adjudicator's light pulsed toward the piano, now silent and profound. They did not give us a tune. They gave us a universe. They have not presented an argument for their stability. They have presented a truth of their nature. They are not a cacophony. They are a symphony of immense complexity. The diplomat waited. The request for cultural compliance, the adjudicator stated, its voice firm now, is withdrawn. The vote for integration is now before the conclave. The vote was not unanimous, but it passed by a staggering margin. As the delegates filed out, many lingered. Their sensory organs turned toward the silent piano. They had come to assess a troublesome species. They had expected at best a simple, compliant melody. Instead, a human had sat before them and, with 10 fingers and 88 keys, composed a portrait of a soul that was vast, contradictory, suffering, and glorious. She had not played for their approval. She had played the truth. And in doing so, she had not just gained humanity a place at the galactic table. She had redefined the idea of what music, and by extension, what a civilization could be.